going back and forth, and like the new guy, just like all he does is scrub the deck, right? And he is like, but there's no shower facilities on this vessel, and they're like, we just wash up on shore. Oh.
Very good.
There's Eric with his wah, wah, wah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Brilliant.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good
How are
morning
you
and
doing?
welcome all.
Thank you very much. How are you doing? How is everybody?
I love the
We're
art.
starting the show with a very lame title joke.
We're not online.
Oh, we're on live.
Yeah,
We're live right now.
You're live.
Already live. Okay, thank you.
So,
Hi from Lima.
with
Hi
that,
from Lima, Peru.
good morning and welcome everyone to another edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. I'm Rob Durant, and apparently the topic this week is my fault. So I will be acting as the host. Before we get into the topic, let's go around the horn with some introductions. Who wants to kick us off?
Hello, I'm Alex, founder of Supero and proud DLA partner. Hello all.
William.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm William Shorten. So I work for DLA as well and also run a consultancy, William Shorten Learning Solutions.
Hi, I'm Linwood Ross. I'm the founder and CEO of Accelerate. We're a DLA Ignite partner. I'm based here just outside New York City.
Lorena.
Hi, I am Lorena Borgo. I'm from Performa. I am also a DLA partner, and I am based in Peru, in Lima, Peru.
Tim.
I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. And welcome to everybody, and welcome to people in the audience as well.
Tracy.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tracy Borison, apparently a terrible joke teller, coming to you from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, this lovely morning, and shockingly, also a proud partner of DLA.
Adam.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray from DLA Ignite. I'm Tim's business partner, and I've got the flu at the moment, so I'm going to be on mute most of the time because I would be coughing. So what Rob could have done is last, and by all means least, Adam. So thank you.
Never, Adam.
And I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results, based in the Boston area, where it is negative 40 degrees outside with the wind chill factor. Woo! The interesting thing about negative 40 degrees, that's the same temperature in Celsius as it is Fahrenheit. And that's pretty stinking cold.
Really?
So, welcome to another edition of the Digital Download. As I said, this started from a conversation we had earlier this week and kind of snowballed from there. I was sharing with the team what I had been teaching to my college freshmen in their career seminar. So the first thing that I shared with them was, if you want fruit from a tree, the best time to plant seeds is 5 years ago. The second best time is today. This week in the Digital Download, we're going to take a look at what upcoming professionals are being taught about career development and networking. It turns out much of what's shared with B School students applies to those open to work, and really anyone interested in career development. So that should be just about everyone. Today we intend to examine the importance of networking and how 2/3 of the LinkedIn population is doing it wrong. We'll talk about the importance of IQ, EQ, and the World Economic Forum's recently coined LQ. And we'll share what effective networking looks like in today's world. I was telling my students, it's not about who you know. It's not about what you know. It's about who knows what you know. And finally, we will provide 3 simple steps anyone can do, everyone should do about it. So grab a midday snack or breakfast burrito if you're in North America and join the conversation. Let's kick us off with this. The importance of networking and how 2/3 of the LinkedIn population is doing it wrong. That's a pretty bold statement. Where does that come from?
Where does the bold
Tim,
statement come from?
Yeah, what are the facts behind
that? It comes from Rob.
Yeah. Darn it. But Tim, did you not share with us some insight? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, there was a news article that came out from, I think it was Social Media World or something. And LinkedIn have put out their new figures, and they're now at 900 million people.
Oh, wow.
Registered on the platform. It doesn't mean they're active using it, but they're registered on the platform. And they can see a trajectory going towards 1 billion, which is fantastic. You know, 1 billion, they reckon there's 1 billion people. Well, the World Economic Forum reckons there's 3 billion people in work, which includes white collar as well as blue collar. So, you know, that's getting close to 1 billion people that are connected. But LinkedIn also admit that there was 310 million people are actually logging in. I think it's once a month. What they measure is that once a month. So about 1/3 of the people, so 2/3 of the people are on there, but they're not doing anything with it. And I never remember how many people post content. Is it like 1% or 2% or something?
Yeah, I think it's like, well, the old figure was 3 million, or 1% were considered content creators, which is relatively low when you compare it to other platforms.
Yeah, the latest figure I heard was like 1.7, so it's still low.
I was going to say,
I'm here. Isn't that good enough?
William, what
it's good enough if you're part of the 1.7 and people are learning who you are and you're building relationships. But I think here's the thing about, based on my concept of like networking that works versus networking that doesn't, the tricky piece of social media is that I think a lot of people think they're connected if they're connected. So if you have a connection with a person, or you have a lot of followers, or any of those things, people think that means they're connected. But networking is, I like the phrase that you use, Rob, like, who knows what you know, right? And that's based on sharing what you know. So either, it doesn't have to be in content, but sharing through conversation, or somehow sharing so that other people know what you're about.
Will.
Thanks, Tracy. And just picking up on that, I mean, I think I'd probably use the terms passive and active in terms of what you've described there. And I mean, it strikes me that even at 310 million, if the criteria of measurement is that you're on there once a month, it's a fairly low bar. So even out of those 310, although say it's only 1/3 of people who are using it, probably once you dig into the figures, and you've then got somewhere between the 1% that Lenwood talked about and the kind of 310 million, you know, how many people are actually using it on a kind of regular basis and kind of contributing in some way?
Yeah. So to answer Martin's question, and I think someone else had a similar question, the 1% or 3 million people that I was referring to is LinkedIn. It's who LinkedIn considers to be content creators. And I used to have that, you know, what a content creator was, their definition, at my fingertips, but I do not have that, and I will look it up for you.
I think it's an interesting point that Martin brings up about content creators versus content reposters, because I think, especially historically on a corporate level, there's a lot of activity that's just based on like the business posts a post and then the employees repost it, right? So then does that look like, instead of one business content creating, and we can break down. I'm excited to hear your definition of LinkedIn.
Well, it's actually LinkedIn's definition. I just can't remember.
Right.
But yes, to the point I think that Rob was asking, why are so many people using LinkedIn in a way that, we would consider to be, we meaning DLA Ignite and the DLA Ignite ecosystem, why are they using it in a way that we would say is not the most useful way? It's how they're approaching it, right? So you'll have a huge portion of people who see LinkedIn as just a database, and they're going to use that database for their purpose. And their purpose, a lot of sellers on LinkedIn, their purpose is to make sales. So they see LinkedIn as a lead generation tool, and they use it that way. I'm just in here trying to find people who meet my target audience. I want to connect with them as quickly as I can, pitch them as quickly as I can, and they're out. And then you have another group, they also see LinkedIn as a database, and they're looking for a job. So they're going and they're just using LinkedIn to find a job. And you have another group, they're using LinkedIn to find people to hire, right? Just in this very isolated. Then you have this very small group of people that are using LinkedIn for relationship building, to generate conversations, okay? And from my perspective, that's the right approach to how you should use LinkedIn. And we can get into why I do that later, but that's how I would break it down, and that's why I would say we think easily 2/3 are not using LinkedIn in a way that is digital forward.
It's interesting, Lenwood, those 4 groups that you talked about, the ones that are using it for a selling platform, the ones that are using it to find a job, the ones that are using it to find candidates to fill jobs. LinkedIn actually sells specific solutions to each of those 3 target audiences.
Yes.
The one they don't sell a solution to is the one that we're advocating for. Be out there, be connecting.
And there's really good reason for that, okay? It's called business. LinkedIn needs to make money, okay? So even though, LinkedIn is relatively old platform now. I think it's 20 years old, right? So the platform has evolved. When it started, when they were going viral and people were signing up and it was growing, 1,000% every month or whatever the figures were, rapidly, exponentially growing. It was a different platform than it is today, and the times were different than it is today. And so LinkedIn developed business models to support itself as it continues to evolve, just like all businesses will have to do. Use it as an example. 20 years ago, it was one thing. Today, it's something different. In 5 or 10 years, it will be something different again.
Yeah. So don't you think it's ironic then that LinkedIn have designed initially a platform for, I guess, reciprocation, two-way dialogue, yet there's a heavy focus on commercializing, commercializing the model, if you like, from a sales and marketing perspective, getting their customers to do what actually has the opposite effect of
it's really a conundrum, because the reason that LinkedIn was able to grow as rapidly as it has grown, or all of the social media platforms, right? The reason it's actually, just math. It's just networks, right? All these networks existed, and what these platforms were able to do was digitize those networks. Once they digitized the networks, and it's hard to remember back, they realized, okay, I've got this mass of people. How do I make money from that mass of people? And they've done that, and they've continued to adapt the platforms for the times. But now what has happened is we're kind of stuck in old behavior on LinkedIn, which there was a time when what people are doing with LinkedIn still today made sense. But that time has passed.
So Rob, I got a question for you.
Sure.
You're currently doing some lecturing with the students. What do the students what do they see about networks? Do they see a network as important? Do they see, my mother is 85 years old and Adam's is 88. They both have really strong networks. They actually see, and it's one of these things where they actually recognize the need that they know Frank down the road and whatever, and Janice and stuff like that, and they build these things even though they don't know what the word network is. What do your students think?
I would say at this point they don't even know what the concept of networking is, or having a network. They have networks, and they've shared with me, oh yeah, this is my group of friends, this is my college friends, these are my friends from back home, and they connect with them through all of the different social apps, TikTok, Snapchat, etc. But they've never, at least the ones that I've talked with, given any thought to intentionally building their network. And that was the piece that I loved sharing with them. I contend that for a college student, the best time in your life for being on LinkedIn is right now as a college student. Hence if you want fruit, plant the seeds today. But it was more about understanding that as a college student, reaching out to people and building your network, people will generally accept your LinkedIn connection request without question. You'll find that 9 out of 10 people you reach out to, if you have a decent message, if you're not spammy and not selling them something, they want to help college kids because most of us have been there before. And I told them, that's why it's so critically important to build up your network today. Get to at least 500, and 500 is a magical number.
Yep.
Because once you have 500 connection requests, somebody looking at your profile will see that you have 500 plus connections. 501 or 5,001 or 15,001, they'll never know. But that 500 is that magical number for your network, because people like to connect with others that are connected.
And we're all in that position. I agree, Rob. If anyone sends us a connection request, it's nicely written. I'm Stephen McKenzie, and I'm currently studying at West Sussex University. I'm in my second year doing business. And will you connect with me? Of course you would.
Exactly. What happens the day they get a job?
I won't connect to them.
Exactly. And that's what I told them.
So I think there's an interesting piece of this, right? Because the message you just made up, Tim, it's an authentic message, right? Like, this is me, this is where I'm currently at, I'm reaching out to connect with you. There's a practice in there that can transition into, if you're job seeking, so the career development piece, if you are a salesperson trying to make connections, or running your own business and trying to make connections, or you're trying to get investment funding and you're trying to make connections, sometimes I think I've talked about this before on the show, but sometimes I'm just like, hey, I stumbled across your profile and you look like fun peep. I think we should connect. And sometimes people accept it, sometimes people don't. But there's like an authenticity from my perspective that like literally this is why I am reaching out to connect with you. And if you're okay with that, then awesome. And if you're not okay with that, then awesome. So I think it's important from both sides for us to look at like how are we sending out connection requests? Is it intentional? Like Rob mentioned, because I think a lot of things in the digital space lack intentionality. But when we do have that intentionality, how do we show that? How do we show that we're being intentional with that? And then also when we're accepting, how do we equally do that? There's lots of people raising their hands. How do we do that intentionally as well? So I think I saw Will first and then Lorena.
Lorena
I wanted,
hasn't spoken yet,
yes.
so go Lorena.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I was getting back to what I would like to get back to what Tim mentioned about networks and 80 plus people having them. And what I think is that the word or the concept of network has been put into value recently. I mean, maybe 30 years ago or something like that. Because I remember, for example, when people, when this, from a business view, you know, use your network, build up your network, and really that time ago it sounded like too non-personal and too cosification, why are you going to use your network, your relations for something beyond having a friendship or a contact or whatever. So I think the whole concept of networking has been evolving in the last years from a business perspective, and so it is right now on digital. So I think we are learning, and if you ask, for example, Robert, your students, they don't know about that because I think it's we have to learn how to use our networks from a business perspective, but not going beyond, not thinking that it's not right. So that's a little bit my thoughts about
Will.
that.
So I think to link some of these things together, I mean, first of all, I think Kenny makes a really good point in the chat about the kind of training that's required to support people to go through this. And I think this leads to kind of part of it, because and I know things have changed a lot since I was 18 or 19. I think we're a little bit, when we're developing networks, you know, it's very natural for us to, you know, we go through our academic process. We'll be very networked, usually with the people who are in the same age group as us. But sometimes that won't even kind of extend to a year above or a year below or 2 years above, which in time space is very short. But at that time in our life, it's like, it seems like a massive step. So I think, you know, you then take it and say, well, we want you to be reaching out to kind of adults and the outside world. I mean, people just don't know kind of how to do that, and they haven't got the confidence to do that. So there is something around mindset here, part which is down to training, but part of it is to help demonstrate how useful this can be. And the fact, you know, we have these kind of limiting beliefs that we carry around with us, that actually if I reach out, they're not going to be interested in what I have to say. They're not going to be interested in the invitation I'm sending, however well versed it is. You know, that's all the thought processes behind us. And so part of it is trying to understand, well, look, what's the worst that's going to come out of this? And we've all been through this. I mean, we've been through this, probably most of us, in the last 2 or 3 years, as we've come over into the social world and given it a go. And we're a bit more kind of mature, and we've learned how to deal with it. So there's something about, yes, the training and the support, and also kind of saying, look, this is fine, and it's not going to work every time, but go out there and give it a go, and you may be pleasantly surprised about what you manage to achieve.
Can I share a story with you? I think it will be helpful to thinking about how we should approach what we're doing on LinkedIn and actually overcome some of the mindset issues or limiting beliefs that we might have when we're working on LinkedIn. So when I was in college, if I had maybe an interest in a girl that I might like to date, I don't know her, okay? I don't just go up to her and say, hey, you want to go out? You want to do something? No, that's not how I approach it. What I do is I say to myself, you know what? I'm going to have an interaction with this person and I'm just going to plant a seed. I'm going to plant a seed. I'm going to water that seed over time. And if I want to date her in the future, I'll be able to pull the trigger. Okay, so, well, this maybe
I
didn't
ended
come
up
out
in the
quite the way I
friend zone
wanted it
so
to.
often.
But my point here is that when you are on LinkedIn and you're thinking about relationship building, if you approach a person thinking, I specifically want to connect with them and ask them to buy something from me right this minute, that is most likely going to result in a no, or, you know, whatever the approach is. We call it connect and pitch, okay? Because you're not interested in the relationship. You have to build the relationship first. And so when you ask, should we be teaching LinkedIn? I would say no, we should not be teaching LinkedIn. What we should be teaching is relationship building. How do we build relationships at scale using LinkedIn?
Well,
Okay.
it's networking. It comes to, you know, that word. It's not relationship building is part of it, but networking, I think, is the broader fit, Lenwood.
Well, and I think there's also, this isn't always the case because we've talked about different types of networks, but I think in the digital space, networking has become a lot more transactional. And there's very little relationship building in a transaction, right? If I need to go to the store and buy a bag of chips, I go to the store and I buy a bag of chips and it's not meaningful to me and I just do it, right? And a lot of what we're seeing in the digital space in terms of quote unquote networking, which I don't think any of us consider it actually real networking, but it is that transactional, right? I've had people who are like, I won't talk to you unless you're interested in buying something from me. And I'm like, okay, bye.
Yeah. I agree with that, Tracy. There's so many negative connotations associated with that term networking, that I think it actually does more harm than good to think about it as networking. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. But you know, if I think about it as, you know, when I think about it as relationship building, that immediately takes me out of a transactional mindset. I don't have to do, because I'm building a relationship in this half-hour conversation or in this, you know, interaction that I'm having. I don't need to get everything done. They don't need to learn everything there is to know about me. I don't need to learn everything there is to know about them, because I'm starting something that's going to continue, you know, hopefully indefinitely.
But that makes an assumption that people understand what a networking is, and they're comfortable with that. When Adam and I were doing business in Singapore, one of the people said to us, "You want me to connect to people I don't know? How do I do that? What's that about?" And certainly in that culture, there was a very clear view that you wouldn't connect to people you didn't know, or you would only connect to people you did know. And probably you'd only connect to people that you'd shaken their hand or had some sort of meeting with. And I still think, because of the way that we've now moved online, the number of networking events, you know, there's lots of, I have by my desk, I've shown this before, a whole pile of business cards, because it's kind of a window into a world where you used to go to networking events or meet people and use their business cards.
Someone drilling.
Sorry.
Rush hour in Lima.
Yeah.
That's a networking event in Lima sound effect. And now people aren't doing that. So and so I think what happens, going back to the students, which is that actually saying to a student, well, why don't you reach out to these very old-looking people? I'm talking about myself. And connect with them and say, "Hi, I'm Steve. Can I connect?" Is actually like a really scary, difficult thing to do, which is what Will was saying.
Very much so. And I remember being that age and hating just the word networking. Networking was a 4-letter word. Yeah, but the reason was because networking in my mind was, it's all about who you know. And I didn't grow up in a family that knew a lot of influential business people. I grew up in a family of teachers, and how networking, who you know, that's unfair. If you want to get a sense of equity and fairness, speak to a college kid. They know all about what's fair. It's only as we become old and cynical that we realize, oh, life isn't fair, and I just have to pick up the pieces and deal with it. They're not ready to pick up the pieces and deal with it yet. So that's where I was assuring them that it's more than just what you were born into. It's more than just who you know.
Yeah.
And I also have a section of honors students. I can relate to them as well. Going through school, I was an honors student, and I was of the belief that, you know, if I just got the right grades, then the next thing would come to me. And guess what? It didn't. But when you put together who you know with what you know, and you start to make those connections so that people know you and know what you know, that's when I started to get traction. And oh, by the way, that's when I really started to enjoy networking. Me, I'm a teacher at my core, is what I like to say. Where that stems from is I'm a helper. I'm a helper at my core, and teaching is the way that I do that. Networking for me is getting to know somebody new, figuring out what they might have going on, and where I can contribute. Malcolm Gladwell in his book, The Tipping Point, talks about connectors. And it's all about seeing this person over here with this need and meeting this person over there that solves this problem and putting them together. That for me is fabulous. That's networking. And that's what I'm trying to instill in the students. And I laughed at the comment earlier. Do you think this should be taught? Well, that's exactly what I'm doing. And I'm kind of doing it in a skunkworks way, because LinkedIn wasn't really a major part of the lesson plan until I doctored it a little bit.
Can I connect the thought that Tim had and your thought, Rob? And it's this idea of how do I talk to or engage with someone that I don't know? So when we think about the event, like the conference, right, where people we don't know come together and somehow we find something to talk about, what's the thing that is bringing that group together is the content. It's the speaker that they've invited to talk about a specific issue. Okay, so that brings people from all around the world who we don't know to a single location, right? A physical location where we're all going to focus on this thing that we care about. And if I want to network in that environment, all I need to do is say, what did you think about what the speaker said about X, Y, and Z? And this is what I think about. And so now we're having a conversation with someone we don't know, and we're getting value from it, right? That same principle applies to LinkedIn. We can begin to have conversations with people we don't know when we focus on the content, the thing that's bringing us together in this particular moment in time, a post or what have you, and we engage them about that content. That's it.
Very similar to Ahmed's comment. You know, networking, one person may feel that someone is close and the other one does not believe the relationship is close at all. That's exactly what happens in these types of transactions. And whether it's close or not, it's the start of something, or it's the start of nothing. And Tracy, you've talked about where others have said, well, I only connect if we have a call, or I only connect if you're going to buy something from me. And very quickly you weed out those that aren't aligned with how you want to move forward.
It's swipe left or swipe right.
Exactly.
Well, and I think too, it's interesting. I hosted a conversation a while ago, and Ledwin was there, and one of the things that came up in that conversation was like, how much do you reveal about yourself, right? Because I feel like if you're the person in the party who feels like there's a closeness, it's probably because you've revealed something about yourself that you don't reveal to all people, right? And these are the types of things too that it takes practice, but you get to like pulse check them, right? Like, oh, I revealed this type of information and this person is not interested in going there at all. So although I think maybe there might be something here, and that person isn't playing my game, and I'm just gonna leave it. And at the same time, no two people are ever having the exact same experience, right? So you may not know what's going on. These are real people, right? So real people have lives that exist outside of whatever conversation you're having. They have challenges, they have emotions, they have experiences that you don't know about. And I think there's like, again, when we talk about moving away from a transactional interaction, we're talking about it's just being more human, right? Are we being supportive? Are we being compassionate? Are we being these things in the digital space? Because we probably would be like, if somebody was sitting next to you crying, you probably would just like give them a minute and be like, I had this scenario with my 4-year-old yesterday, but like this person needs a minute, right?
Rob, at the beginning, sorry, Tracy. At the beginning, you talked about the World Economic Forum.
Yes.
And this thing called LQ. So I know what IQ is and EQ is. So what's LQ?
I took it to mean learning quotient.
It does.
How well you are at understanding new concepts. Now, it's great to have a great LQ, but you have to sharpen that sword too. That's kind of what I got from watching that video of the World Economic Forum. I know, Alex, you had made reference to it as well. What did you take from that?
Yeah, there's so I think in line with what Tracy was just saying and what Len was saying about building relationships, for me that sits within that continuous learning kind of thread. Kind of before we go to what was said on the video, I think the problem we have, the challenge we have is we're all sitting here with a lot more freedom than most. So we've had the kind of freedom to try this stuff, and we know it works. It works really, really well, especially if you want to speak to 5, 10, 15 new people a week. The problem is most people don't have that freedom, and they have the pressure of business pushing down on them saying, how many meetings have you made? Is that conversation qualified? And they don't ever get the freedom to learn these new skills effectively. And so when I think about that continuous learning spectrum thread, I kind of start to think about, well, who is responsible? Is it the individual? Maybe, but then are they allowed? Do they have the freedom to do the continuous learning that they want to? Is it the employer? Is it the universities? And the UAE minister talked about the fact that in the UAE, they want the universities to stay engaged with the learners, the alumni for their life, their career.
Free of charge.
Free of charge, yeah. Or is it the government? Where does who's accountable? Where does the responsibility sit? Because, for me, I'm the best thing I ever did was to learn this new skill, thanks to Tim and Adam. Really kind of opened my mind to the art of the possible, but I wouldn't have had the freedom to do that if I wasn't running my own business.
Right. Well, this is actually a problem, this learning quotient problem, this challenge of how do we do learning, how do we do any of this stuff when the environment that we're in is moving so rapidly, right? Business is changing so quickly. And that's really the fundamental problem, actually. General Stanley McChrystal said about the war in Iraq, he said, you know, the US Army has all the skills, we have all the technology, we have all the resources that we need, but we're still losing. And the reason, he said, that they were still losing is because the battlefield was changing so rapidly. They were ill-equipped for the environment in which they had to operate in. And so that's where he came up with this idea of the team of teams, that really the issue is adaptability and interoperability, is having teams that are moving very quickly and able to work well with one another. This is the same challenge that we face in business today, that we can't operate because the world that we live in, the digital world, is an exponential world. We cannot afford to approach things in a linear way. Like Alex was saying, hey, we don't have time to stop our work and learn and then come back to our work. That approach no longer works because the world is moving too quickly. So what we have to do is actually learn while we are working. We have to integrate our skill development with projects that solve business problems. That has to happen because the world's moving too fast to do it in a linear way.
I think that's a great way to learn, though, when you're learning on the job, but it's not when you don't have the freedom to learn properly, where you've still got that pressure. Oh, you've been learning that for 2 months. What are the results? It's like, okay, hang on.
Yeah, that's why the learning, especially from a business perspective, the learning has to be in the context of solving a business problem. So as we are solving this business problem, we are going to learn the skill that's going to help us to solve it.
Yeah, and have the support from the leadership team.
And have the support from that helps you with the support from the leadership, because leadership is all about time and money, right? And so we don't have time to everybody stop and then go and learn. No, that won't work. If you can learn the thing you need to know and solve a business problem for me, now I'm on board with you. So anyway, that is interestingly enough, the leaders that they have assembled for this conversation at the World Economic Forum, they were really talking about that. They were dancing around this issue of continuous learning or learning quotient and adaptability, and how do we make this an ongoing process? And I think from their perspective, they saw the biggest challenge as being with the individual, because even when I graduated from school, the thinking was, okay, I've learned, now I go and I start work and I work. And my learning is sort of over. Okay, today, and I think the Minister of Education for the UAE said this most succinctly. What we need to think about is the university is going to give the basic skills, and when we graduate, that's when the learning starts. And there's a role for the employer to keep up with that continuous learning. It has to get into the culture. I would say, some people say it's the business culture, but really it's the culture overall. Everyone needs to get on board with this idea that we have to keep learning, because what we learned 5 years ago is not going to be applicable today. And what we're learning today, it's not going to be applicable in 5 years. So that's why all these things have to be happening simultaneously, continuously. That's the road to the solution.
Well, can I just I agree with everything that has been said. And I do think, like, one of the things after your original question, Rob, that I thought was that, like, individuals have to choose that. Like, we have to choose to want to keep learning, right? Because if you have a business culture that says, this is what we do, and we continuously learn, and you're like, no, I'm uncomfortable with that, I'm just gonna sit here and do my job. Well, hopefully they wouldn't hire you in the first place if that was actually the business culture. But as individuals, we have to choose that. And then there's also, like, I've had in my personal experience where someone wanted me to learn a specific thing in the way they did it. Like, they wanted me to learn their way of how to negotiate. And I couldn't, because it never felt good to me. Didn't feel like I was negotiating for a good value exchange. It felt like I was negotiating to win. And I'm a collective contribution type of person, right? And so there's also this kind of individual, personal brand, personality piece that plays into how effective are we going to be with our own learning quotient. And like, my learning quotient and what I want to learn is different than Lenwood's and Rob's and Tim's and Will's, right? Like, and so how do we take that into consideration in the business perspective, and how do we create space for that so we actually optimize the learning quotients of each of our employees?
So I think there's a lot to unpack here, and we could go down many different avenues, but I'll give you my feeling for what it's worth. So if you look at some more enlightened educationalists at the moment, they say actually the education system is broken. We need to redesign the whole education system, going right the way back to elementary school, because what we're basically doing is kind of pushing information, and kids aren't necessarily interested in some of that. What we tend to focus on is the stuff that really interests us. So it comes back to your point, Tracy, that actually if we're told to learn something in a particular way, that's not necessarily going to kind of interest us. So the education system that we've got was designed for the Industrial Revolution, and it was basically a form of childcare to keep kids off the street. And we haven't really evolved that much since then. So there's something around actually how we design the education system to start off with. To come back to your point about learning on the job, in terms of adult research, what they'll say about learning is it's a rule of 70-20-10. 70% of what we learn is on the job, 20% is by shadowing somebody and seeing how to do something, and 10% is actually going and taking part in some form of standard training. So how do we kind of motivate people to go towards this? So one thing I think is around, you've got to create the right context for it to happen. So yes, a lot of the responsibility lies with the individual, but if you've got an individual in an organization that doesn't value training and doesn't give them the opportunity to grow, then it doesn't matter how motivated you are, you're not going to do it. But it does have to start with you. And I think starting with you, it comes down to, you can use LQ if you want. Carol Dweck talked about a fixed and open mindset. So actually it's having that ability to see things differently and not just say, well, I've been trained to do this and I'm going to just stick in that particular lane. I'm going to kind of broaden the approach that I'm going to take. So, part of it then is with the individual, that you have to have that kind of motivation. And then, with that, how collectively can we then tap into that into an organization? So Peter Senge talked about the kind of 5 disciplines, talked about collective intelligence and collective learning. And to come back to Lenwood's point about the VUCA environment we're working in, that's where you've got to kind of tap in and utilize that, because that's how you can then adapt and adjust to the environment and context in which you find yourself, in a way that's going to be meaningful and in a way that the whole organization is going to be able to benefit from it.
When we started this, I alluded to providing 3 simple steps anyone can do, everyone should do about this. But before I get into that, Alex, did you have something you wanted to share with us?
I did. So I think everyone on this call knows that I work with my 2 eldest sons, and love the fact that we can work together and they have the freedom to grow and follow their career. I'm quite lucky about that they want to work with their dad. So my 3rd son is doing his GCSEs. He's 15. He's one of the youngest in the year, and he does struggle with maths and English, and there's pressure on kids today to do well in maths and English, but he enjoys media and he enjoys creating content. So I'm hoping, and I think I can do this. I've started to look into it. Even as a small company, I can offer him an apprenticeship. And so, all being well, and he does well in his exams, he can join Sapiro later this year. But he did a bit of work in English, which he struggles in. And I wanted to just read it out to you because it's so topical. And the date's the 1st of February. It's just coincidental. It says, education is key to the youth of this day and age. The education system in school is still good to learn from, especially at a young age. But as we mature, the outside world becomes our classroom.
Nice.
Boom.
Which I just thought was amazing. And the feedback his teacher gave him, I'm not naming any names, was, "That's annoyingly brilliant, Jude."
Adam, were you his teacher? That sounds like an Adam response.
It does.
I'm just annoying.
So this started with me telling my students it's all about who knows what you know, and the power of LinkedIn, and how this is the time in your life where you can best leverage it. Of course, they then turn to me and say, well, how do you do it? I won't pretend to be a LinkedIn expert. There are plenty of LinkedIn experts that will sell you the course on that. But I did share with them 3 basic tenets. And these foundations that you can build on and grow from. And truly, I believe this is what anyone can do to be more effective, not just on LinkedIn, but in networking in general, whether it's digitally or in the real world. First and foremost, be approachable. On LinkedIn, that means, having a decent profile, filling in some of the blanks, making sure that you're open to receiving connection requests, that they don't have to know your email address to even send you that request. Next, be sociable. If you want to be part of the conversation, first and foremost, be part of the conversation. Comment, like, interact with other posts, and then, ever so brave, start to put your own thoughts out there. And honestly, that was really intimidating to the students. And then I asked them, well, don't you post on Snapchat all the time? Don't you have an Instagram account? Yeah, but that's different. I know. LinkedIn isn't Facebook, right? But put your thoughts out there related to the things that you're interested in, the professional things that you're interested in. And then finally, third step, be helpful. Again, back to the commenting and connecting and so on. Be approachable, be sociable, be helpful. And I think with that, you're going to find your way, whether it's this social platform, some other social platform, or just in general, people will gravitate towards that.
Rob, can I add to your list?
Please.
2 things that I think would be helpful for those people who are especially introverted and I don't know what to say. Be curious, ask questions.
Absolutely.
Be curious, ask questions. That goes so far. If you go, anyone who is posting on LinkedIn or engaged in a conversation on LinkedIn, if you ask them a question about what they said, I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that. You don't really have to generate much yourself. You just ask the question.
But building on that, Lenwood, I think as well, there's something, and it depends on your stage, but also reaching out and asking for a bit of help.
Oh yeah.
Be humble.
Humility,
Well, I think-
asking for help, man, that goes so far. It's crazy.
Tracy,
Yeah, one of the things I just wanted to add on to that concept of being sociable, because Lenwood brought up the introversion, right? There's not one way that sociable looks, right? It's based on who you are and what feels sociable to you. It's not about saying like, oh, sociable means I have to get on a LinkedIn Live with 6 other people and talk about a topic. It might look like that. It doesn't have to, right? It can look like just asking a question. Honest curiosity, I think, is one of my favorite things. I know, because it's like, oh, I haven't had to explain this to somebody in a long time. This is awesome, right? And we all have a unique, I speak about this a lot, about your, like, what do you wonder? Hashtag what do you wonder, follow it if you want to. I just created it. There's not that much content related to it. But all of it, like, every person has a unique thing that they wonder, right? Like, you go to school and there's specific subjects that you're innately interested in, right? Wonder about that. Ask questions about that. Connect with people who are in those fields, right? It doesn't have to be connect with all people so you have a big network, right? Connect with people who seem interesting to you. Be sociable in your way. And there's a little bit of trial and error that exists in there too, right? Show up one way and then you're like, oh, no, that doesn't feel like me. And that's okay. That's part of the learning process. It's part of the learning quotient. And I think that oftentimes on like personal branding front, people think, especially coming out of college, that you should just know, right? Like, I should know how I would authentically connect with someone online. You don't. You mostly have other people telling you who you should be. And most of us get really good at being who we should be. And it's about exploring, who are we actually? How would I actually do that? And there's some failure that exists in there as well.
Yeah. And for business leaders, yeah.
Go ahead, Al.
For business leaders, the closing comments on the World Economic Forum was that if every person, I think there's 3.8 billion workers out of the 8 billion global population. If every person learned one skill and that skill was collaborative problem solving, it's worth $2.5 trillion to our global economy.
Ooh, I love it.
What would it be worth if every person learned to digital network to our economy?
maybe we should work that out.
Yeah. What would it be worth to someone's business if everyone within their organization learned how to do what we're talking about today?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
We should
Tracy,
work that out.
Yeah. I wanted to come back to, I don't even remember now specifically what it was that you said, but something that you said reminded me what else I told the students.
That's the giantest calculator I've ever
Yeah,
seen.
he's going to need a bigger calculator. I told the students, this isn't about becoming an influencer with a capital I. And that's their perception of all of this. Networking on a digital stage is about being a social media influencer. No, not at all. It's just about getting more people to know what you know and learning from them equally.
Sounds good.
So,
but can I 2 minutes? So
yeah.
Add to your 3 and the 2 that Lenwood and Tracy and
we're going to need 2 stone tablets in a moment.
Encouragement. I always, whenever I sit down and I think, what can I say? It's what can I do to encourage? And it's there's that comedy thing where you do the improv comedy, where which you can bring into business, which is to not say when someone comes up with an idea. Yeah, usually what happens is you say, yeah, but we can't do that because of what we should be doing is saying yes, and we could do this. And it's that improv comedy thing, and that's that encouragement. I think is so key.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
I think that brings us to the top of the hour. Another successful show. I want to thank all of the panelists, of course. It's great to see you every week. I want to thank all of the viewers, all of the comments, some great contributions from the audience this week. And I'm looking forward to seeing everyone again next week on the Digital Download.
And I'm looking forward to when Jordan Abbott comes on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Being as I know that he's in the audience now, Jordan, we want you on. We want
The younger generation.
Yeah. We want you to come and contribute to this.
Yeah,
Look,
absolutely.
everybody's saying yes. Come on.
All right, that does us. Bye, all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.